Jane Mclntyre has led and coached business teams across Europe and South Africa, as well as entrepreneurs and individuals who want to be more effective and joyful in their personal and business lives. She has studied and applied the brain science of managing yourself and others to reduce stress and put the bounds back in your step. This helps you find a more positive perspective, better solutions, and more sparky connections with others. Hi, I'm Sanchia Vandayar, and this is Zero Podcast. In this episode, I get to ask Jane a few questions. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Jane. What inspired the idea for sparking more joy and success at work and play?
Thank you so much, Sanchia, and a very warm welcome to everybody listening. I am so excited to share what I know about what we can do ourselves to develop a life which has more purpose and engagement and to be more effective, as well as to have better health in our minds and in our bodies. And I really do hope that you will find something of real value in this discussion. So thank you for this opportunity. So what inspired me is that it actually came out of feeling very depleted and burnt out at one stage. And I thought that this is not good enough. So I interviewed quite a few friends of mine who are entrepreneurs to say, is there anything that you have come across that has made a lasting difference in your life, in work and in play, and in just general being a human being? And through that exercise, I was encouraged to go and train as a workplace coach. So I decided to go for that. Not necessarily for the opportunity to be a coach in the traditional sense of the word, but to change the way I think and the way I approach life and interactions with other people. So what I did is I trained as a coach, and I was very lucky that the organization that I did it with was also aligned with an international neuro leadership institute, which looks at the brain science and sees what implication it has for the way we show up in the world. How it can, if we know how the brain works, how do we manage stress? How do we manage decision making, creativity, and change? And this was something that excited me so much that I took a once-off opportunity in South Africa where this Neuro Leadership Institute was offering a postgraduate qualification at Stellenbosch Business School. And I have to say that changed my life for the better. And it's something that I am still extremely motivated to share, which is why I'm doing this today. So one of our lecturers was a Dr. Ian Weinberg, who is a neurosurgeon in South Africa. And he found that there were some times when he was unable to operate on a brain tumor because it would have caused too much damage in the brain. And what he did find was, through a lot of research, he found out that there were particular mindsets that people generally fall into, that the mind has a huge impact on the body. And if we can help people change their mindset, we can help them to be healthier, happier, much more productive, creative, and on top of their game. Isn't that incredibly exciting? So to give you a brief overview of his work, in his research he found out that a large number of South Africans are in a hopeless, helpless mind state where they have no purpose. They don't see purpose in anything. Why bother? And that sense of purpose can be very, very damaging because we can fall into depression And we can also fall into anxiety, and that ends up in making us unwell and also unproductive. So in addition of not having purpose, this hopeless, helpless mindset is brought on by lack of integration. And what is meant by integration is integrating what you know and what other people talk about and everything you're exposed to in your life, integrating it in a learning process. So if you have no integration, you will hate people who disagree with you, and that might even be violently. And this is not a productive way of being. And so what the goal is to say, how do we change that? So the second kind of mind state would have a lot of meaning and purpose. So there'd be a strong reason to get out of bed, but very little integration. And I am very sure that all of you have come across somebody who is incredibly driven, but it has to be my way or the highway. And that kind of person is still not in a very good mind state. It's better than having no purpose. However, those kind of strongly driven people, and actually, by the way, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, it can end up in causing heart attacks and all kinds of things, because the actual brain chemicals that are produced by such a mind state cause raised adrenaline and also cortisol in the body. And you know what? A burst of adrenaline is very, very helpful if you're being chased by a lion. However, in some organizations, people feel as though they are being chased by a kind of a lion all day long. They're on hyper alert. They are very tense and anxious and just too overwhelmed. And the effect of that in your body is that those chemicals are circulating round and round your body all the time. And that leads to the production of a lot of inflammation in your body. And that manifests in almost all the dread diseases: brain tumor, stroke, heart attacks. And not only that, on an ongoing basis, every day, you may think that you are doing your best, however, you're not thinking well. It impairs your kind of thinking. It definitely impairs any kind of creative problem solving, because you're too busy being chased by a proverbial lion. And so that's something we really need to look at. It's hard sometimes, particularly as an entrepreneur, and I'm actually married to one, so I know what it's like when there just is so much to be done and it's all so important. However, you have to look at the long-term effect of that. And that's why I'm hoping that some of this discussion will give you some new ways of thinking and some new tools that will help you manage that, so that you're not chased by a lion all day. So what we're striving for is high purpose and meaning, but also high integration, and that Ian Weinberg calls an alpha mind state. So in that instance, you have a good reason to be alive and to get out of bed, and you're motivated. However, you're also just a bit more flexible and fluid, because you look at other people's opinions, you're prepared to work with others. And when you look at something you don't like, you're able to reframe it and say, what can I learn from that? And that is the secret, because in that way, we stay just calmer in both senses of the word. And it is a kind of mind state that gives you the optimal brain and body chemistry that is pumping around your veins. So that's what inspired me. And since then, I have run quite a few courses, and I've also got involved in terms of attending the Global Joy Summit last year. And right now I have enrolled for a deep dive into how to live with more joy. And this is on a spiritual level and on a scientific level, to say what are the practices that help us stay in that alpha mind state. And that is where we are most effective and we're most alive and full of the joys of spring. So that's my inspiration.
Can you explain a little about how this works? And how do you handle stress and pressure in the business world?
Sure, I'll give you a really useful framework. It is a triangle of wellness and performance that was developed by an American psychiatrist professor at UCLA. And what he looks at is 3 different fields of energy that we can consciously look at to manage almost any situation. So the first part is the brain. And I'd like you to imagine a huge big fishbowl, and let's just say it's glass so that we can see through it. And in it is a whole pile of different ropes and strings of different thicknesses and different lengths. And what that represents is the neural pathways that are in our brain. So what happens is that a new thought, something new, you go to a fantastic workshop and you're inspired by something new. At that moment, it is only a very, very fine, thin little piece of cotton. And if you don't revisit it, if you don't actually engage with it and apply it on a daily basis, it will actually, in the end of the day, almost evaporate. And you hear people talking about the road to hell being paved with what? Yeah, good ideas, good intentions, but we need to do more than that to grow them. So one part about looking at the brain is that if we want something to be lasting, we need to actively work on it and apply it in our daily lives. And I run some courses and I find it is much, much more effective to learn a little, apply it, come back, learn a little more, apply it, and have the possibility to discuss it so that you really appreciate the value of something and you give feedback each time on how you applied it last time. And that is a way of building a new neural pathway. Because how the brain works, and particularly when it's under stress, it will immediately go for the thickest pathways. So if you have some wonderful things that you intend to do in the day and some things you actually know are great, sometimes your brain just can't access it, as I said, particularly when it's stressed. So this brings me to the second part of thinking about the brain, is that we somehow think that human beings are thinking beings. And it's very disappointing, actually, to find out that our prefrontal cortex, which is situated just sort of behind your forehead in your brain, it is incredibly thin. And this is the part of the brain which is in charge of your executive function, which is your conscious good problem solving and also your ability to really carry through on your intentions without flipping your lid. Because what we find, because this prefrontal cortex is only about 10% of the mass of your brain, and it's even actually less effective than 10% of the time of the day, because it wears out very, very quickly. So I think you know when you are in a session where you have really deep thinking, it's quite exhausting. And this is because the batteries of your prefrontal cortex run out. So that's very humbling. And we really need to think about strategies to get more battery power out of our brains. So what is important are 2 things. One is to start the day when your brain is fresh, focusing on the most important strategic and problem-solving activities that you need for today. So you might think you do that, but I would challenge most people that when they wake up in the morning, they reach for their heart-lung machine, aka a cell phone, and they switch it on and they get involved in social media, in all kinds of things that either use up all your beautiful, precious, strong brain that's full of battery, and or maybe actually do worse than that. They might trigger you into some kind of response that might spiral you into a state of stress when you see all the bad things happening in the world or whatever it may be. So if we realize we have a very limited brain capacity, it's important to use your fresh brain on the most important things. So my recommendation is to take your first hour of the day, even if you feel you can't do that, your first half hour of the day, to first of all clear your mind and to just take a few deep breaths, preferably out in nature with your feet on the grass. Just be here and be now and have a very open, clear, alert brain. And then to set your intention for the day. So if there's one thing you really need to do today, what is it that would give you the most value, give your business the most value, to focus on doing best? What is that intention? And not only the what. Once you've identified the what, then also identify how. What is the best way I need to show up in this situation? So let's say, for example, you're going into a really tough negotiation. How would it be best to show up in that situation? And only you can decide what would be the best way. Would it be to stay calm no matter what, to stay focused, to be collaborative? What is it? So once you set your intention for the day while your brain is fresh, you've kind of programmed it of what's the most important thing and how you're going to show up. And that can make enormous difference in terms of the actual outcomes of the day. The second thing with the brain is when you look at all your tasks for today, quite a lot of them involve a thinking part and then an implementation part. The most effective thing to do is where there is problem solving to be done, just do those parts early on in the day. Set aside a time when you shut your office and you're doing thinking time and no one may disturb you, where, let's say, for example, you are wanting to attract new clients with a great proposal. And what you might then do is say, okay, I've got A, B, C, D, E that I need to do today. I'm not suggesting you write all of those proposals from beginning to end. But what I am suggesting is that you map out what the key bones of what it is you want to communicate. You map it out on a piece of paper, and if there's some problem solving to be done, do it early. And then later in the day, you can come back to actually putting all the meat on it and all the words to it. That would be the best use of our limited prefrontal cortex. So that's quite an important thing. So now having spoken about the brain as one apex of the triangle, another one is the mind. So we've already spoken about Dr. Ian Weinberg's different mind states and how they have a huge impact on the way people are able to be effective and well. If you think about your mind, it's like a lens. It's a lens of a camera. And you can change your lens. And in fact, even better, early in the morning, you can set your lens so that it doesn't need to be changed. And how you do that, there are two things you can do. One is set an intention, which I've just spoken about. That set a lens for what you're going to look through. And also what you pay attention to grows. So if you find that your brain is getting full of too much attention on things that are not productive, and as I said earlier, if being sucked into a whole lot of very volatile things you can do nothing about, particularly on social media platforms, stay away if you can. It really is. And certainly stay away until your brain is so kaput anyway that I still don't recommend it. Don't get sucked into drama or you will become the drama. And drama is not an effective way of doing anything. So you're in charge to a large extent of how you show up in the world. And we've spoken about now the brain and the mind. But also let's talk about relationship. You can Google something called the Harvard study, which is the longest piece of research in the world. It started at the end of the Second World War, where people were feeling absolutely shattered. And Harvard University said, let's research people over a long period of time to understand what actually contributes to their well-being, their success. And so what they did is, and they're still going today, 80 years plus later, they have a changing sample of people, but they, in each case, any particular participant in the research is researched for decades. So at regular intervals, they will ask to see their medical records, they will interview them, they'll interview their families, and they gathered so much information about what, in actual fact, not only what do we think would lead to happiness and success and wellness, what really does. And out of all of this data, one thing emerged as more important than anything else, and that is relationship. So we are wired to be in relationship. We are wired for that. And what I mean by that, it is defined in this instance of being somebody who's got your back. Somebody who really listens, makes you feel heard, makes you feel empathized with and felt. That makes all the difference. And in the course of my embracing all of this joy work, I'm so really honored that I have a small circle of people who we've just kept going in our own kind of sacred circle where we support each other. And it's something really beautiful to be able to share your deeper thoughts and have real conversations and feel heard and feel felt. So relationship is important. So when you look at your diary and what you're going to put into it, I've spoken about how you show up for the day in terms of setting an intention of how you're going to, what you're going to pay attention to, and maybe clearing out some things that distract you. And also put in your diary how you're going to connect with other people. So it might be in your work sense to say, I'm going to check in on my team and see how they're going, how they're feeling about this. Is there anything that we should discuss or brainstorm? And in your personal life as well, to really find time to acknowledge the important people in your life. It's incredibly important for them and for you. And then lastly, something that helps everything when we look at managing stress and how easily the brain can be, the battery can wear out. And it affects our mind and it affects relationship as well, is to diarize and be serious about investing in your own sense of adventure, curiosity, fun, and joy. This is not an added extra. This is something that can fuel your life, can fuel your creative thinking, and make you highly effective. So I highly recommend that during the day you take little breaks. You don't just work flat out. You have time to just stop and walk about and breathe. And also you incorporate little treats. It could be something really small that makes you feel $1 million. And very importantly, a lot of the research is now saying our connection to nature is vital to our effectiveness and our wellness. So why not, instead of sitting at your desk multitasking over lunch, just go and sit outside and have a little picnic? Honestly, it will recharge you at every single level. And in the work I do, we also, once a week, we take ourselves on a play date. You might think that's crazy, and that's fine. It is, it's fun. And it makes such a difference to just being full of the joys of spring. So my best play date ever was I took myself by myself to Wet n Wild and went down the slides and had a cream soda float. And I felt like a child. And if you think of a child, they're full of energy and curiosity and creativity. And that's actually what we need in the world.
What role has resilience played in your journey?
Sanchia, resilience is something so incredibly critical. It often comes at a time where we feel defeated and challenged, and it doesn't feel comfortable. However, it's up to us how we deal with difficult challenges. And if we're able to deal with them with courage and with humility, we are really able to grow as human beings and in our effectiveness at work and our enjoyment in life. So you might have heard of the growth mindset, which is the best way to be when you're facing difficulty, is to find out how to learn to overcome your difficulty instead of running away from it, or instead of finding every excuse why everybody else caused you to fail. And in fact, in some work that I did for an organization that wanted me to interview various entrepreneurs, I found such an interesting contrast to the way people have dealt with challenge. And the person who dealt with it best was one who overcame losses and disappointments by saying, yes, but I learned. I learned things I didn't know before, and I feel stronger now. And in this global joy course I'm doing in the international community right now, one of the points of discussion is often suffering leads to joy. It sounds really weird, but for example, Nelson Mandela's 27 years in prison on one hand looks like such a waste, but on the other hand, it was the making of him as a very mature, compassionate, and very effective leader. So resilience is something really important. I'm sure any one of you listening would prefer to work with someone or employ someone who has actually managed to pick themselves up when times have been tough, because that's the sort of person you need to have around. Life is challenging. Business is challenging. And if we can be equipped to deal with challenges, we're on a really strong path. So one example that I found myself in quite a difficult situation, it was of my choosing actually, but quite a deep dive adventure, was I was given the opportunity for my company to send me to Europe for 3.5 years. And the job I was given is to coordinate strategy across the whole of Europe and to get together a team that hadn't worked together before, which represented several of the countries, primarily England, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, and including people who were in the factory or in research and development, various brand managers, market research people, and gosh, to get them to work together. So not only were they coming from a different perspective, they were also from different cultures. And perhaps in a way it was helpful for someone from the outside to come in, because I wasn't somebody who was brought up in Europe. And I must say it was really, really tough. And there were many times that I would end up in tears at the end of the day or ready to go home to South Africa. But actually, at the end of the day, it was really the making of me, because I learned things I would never have learned otherwise. I learned how to dig deep, and also the company gave me somebody to help facilitate our meetings, to help us work together and problem solve together better. And the things I learned there were so valuable, and really I think is part of the start of my journey in terms of a more conscious and purposeful human being. So resilience is absolutely key, I think, in anybody's journey, and it all depends on how we can approach it, with a fixed mindset, which might be, oh no, I'm a failure because this didn't work, to a growth mindset, which is, this is an opportunity to dig deeper and to learn and come out stronger and more effective. And that's where resilience plays such an important role.
What does purpose mean to you?
I think we've spoken quite a bit about purpose in general and the importance of having purpose in life to get out of bed and be engaged with life. But if I had to think about my purpose in particular, the purpose I'm setting for myself is to show up as the best version of me in my work, in my play, in my personal life, as much as I can. Also having compassion for myself that I'm not perfect by any means, and I'm going to fall down and make mistakes. But the difference is, with that kind of purpose, I am more conscious. I'm able to repair damage by saying sorry when I do not do it very well. And I'm in a better place to do what I love most, which is to spark more connection, more kindness, and more joy in my sphere of influence, in my own life, with my family and friends, and with people I come into contact with through the courses I give. And that really gives me such a sense of enjoyment and fun and just having a buzz for life.
If there was just one thing you would like to say to those listening, what would it be?
What an appropriate question, Sanchia, because what is all of this podcast about? I would really like to leave everybody listening with a message, and hopefully something that sounds appealing. And that is that you can create more joy and more success and spark and fun and wellness in your life, at work, at play, at home. And there are ways of implementing some of these strategies and really making a difference in the quality of your life, and thereby also in the quality of the lives of people around you. So life is short and precious. Please don't waste it. Have some fun, have some enjoyment in the everyday, and feeding your own soul and your own joy will rub off in such positive ways in all aspects of your life.
Thanks, Jane, and thank you to all listening.